Welcome everybody to another Voice of Nick video editing show. We're going to be doing more of our Metal Gear Solid 2 review. We just started this. We shot it the other day. I shot it off stream the other day. We started editing it yesterday. So let's keep going through it. I wanted to check on one thing about the project. I had a different way of mixing the sound in the MGS1 review, which I ended up really liking. And it was something where I messed with the master audio mixed with the hard limiter. So master is at +2, and then the hard limiter was set to what? -2. Okay, so essentially it mixes it differently. It sounds like it would be exactly the same because the hard limiter brings it down by 2, the master brings it back up, but it's actually a little bit different because of the way that the hard limiter interprets the sound. So let's do this. We're gonna bring this back to -2. We're gonna just do the same exact thing. Take this off of all these. Then we're going to set the master to 2. Okay. So the bosses in Metal Gear Solid 2 are a cell of rogue agents. It's kind of like how Foxhound was in Metal Gear Solid 1. They're a bunch of rogue agents, but in this game, it makes it a lot more interesting that they are very disorganized. Like from the outset, you kind of get the concept that even within their agency, they're not all necessarily on the same page. They're just kind of all out there doing their own things for their own motivations, and it creates really interesting storyline concepts when these bosses actually come up against each other in ways that create these kind of like infighting situations among them. So when you're fighting these bosses, a lot of times other bosses are not even interested in the boss you're fighting winning. It creates these cool storyline situations, and some of the bosses in this game over Metal Gear Solid start to really have interesting puzzles associated with them as well. There's a lot of situations in Metal Gear Solid 2 where when you're fighting these bosses, you really got to put your thinking cap on, because it's not only about how to beat the boss, but then it also becomes these situations of like, how do I stop these master plans that the bosses came up with? There are all these aspects where the game is actively trying to trick you. Think the Psycho Mantis battle in Metal Gear Solid 1, but spread throughout the game. Kojima definitely, you could tell that he loved that concept from the first game, and he really wanted to start expanding the possibilities throughout the boss battle. So you're rarely going to find a boss battle in Metal Gear Solid 2 that is just a straight up boss battle. There's usually something very particular about each one, and that makes it super interesting. The environment in Metal Gear Solid 2... This one I didn't even write a bullet point about, so I just kind of went off this part about the environment. So let's see if it works out at all. The boss thing, we're not necessarily going to talk about the story aspect of the bosses. I don't think I made a great point about that, but we are going to talk about the puzzle element. The environment in Metal Gear Solid 2 is incredible as well. They have this facility called the Big Shell, which is kind of like by design separated into these separate sections, and you're going through and trying to do very specific actions. You're trying to rescue the president, you're trying to save hostages, kind of the expected things. But as you go through this environment, because it is this one area, you start to really kind of understand the geography of the Big Shell. You have a map of the entire facility at all times. Areas get destroyed, areas get altered. You come back to them, you see how they're different. You're trying to find hidden items throughout the environment. There's a sort of like a bomb disposal segment where you're looking for secret items that are planted throughout the area. It becomes this thing where you have this intimate relationship with the environment. In Metal Gear Solid 1, Shadow Moses kind of became like a character in itself, where you are going through the environment, you're doing things in it. But in Metal Gear Solid 2, you really start to have this more intimate relationship with Big Shell. You start to kind of like understand the inner workings of it, and it kind of feels like a real place at a certain point. Like when you start to understand, like, oh, this is how this connects to that, and I found this other area that connects to the same spot that I was at before, and this goes underneath the other spot. Like it in a strange way, Big Shell actually is so well put together that it, you know what it kind of feels like is the first Die Hard movie, where you feel like you have an understanding of that building when you see him going through all the different areas, going to the different floors and going to the areas between the floors. It's this experience where you feel like you have more of an understanding of the building than you would in a normal movie. It's the same as in Metal Gear Solid 2. You really feel like you start to have an understanding of Big Shell logistically just by the way that they present it throughout the game.
A lot of trimming needed there, but I think I made a good point in there somewhere. You'll notice a lot of times I use the same word to describe the thing. I think I said intimate knowledge of the environment like 3 or 4 separate times, and you can tell if you're ever seeing that, it's not because I have a limited vocabulary, though my vocabulary may sometimes be limited, but it's more because anytime I say intimate again, it's when I'm trying to come up with an alternate way to present the same information from before. So like those two intimates would never appear in the same edit. Those are like alternate possibilities to cut in.
So we played the PlayStation 2 version of MGS2.
All right, yeah, this is...
So we played the PlayStation 2 version of MGS2, and this version of the game includes a really cool kind of like additional segment, which is the concept of the previous story books. They actually have prequel novels in this game that you can read that are hundreds of pages long that go into various kind of like alternate perspectives on the events of the first game. So instead of, like in the other Metal Gear games, they would give you like an explanation of what happened last time, or like in any story, you know, previously on this show, here's what happened. This game goes way above and beyond by writing entire books that are written from different perspectives. So one of them is written by a journalist slash conspiracy theorist guy who goes into Shadow Moses Island to try and discover what happened after the events of MGS1, and he gets, you know, has this like really crazy story of trying to sneak in and getting captured by guards and all this stuff. And another one is actually almost like a novelization of the events of MGS1, but from the perspective of Nastasha, who was your handler in the first game. So you get kind of her perspective of everything that was happening throughout the game from her, you know, base in Los Angeles. It was just from her house where she was helping to like act as one of the handlers, and you meet characters who end up being in Metal Gear Solid 2. So if you have access to the PlayStation 2 version of this game, I don't think they ever included it in the remasters, so you would have to acquire the original version. But if you have access to the PlayStation 2 version of MGS2, I highly recommend reading through these, you know, taking an afternoon and reading through these prequel novels, because they actually do shed a lot of light on there, and they're pretty well written as well. I was surprised, especially because Metal Gear Solid 1 in particular had some pretty raw translational mistakes all the time in their previously on areas. Like MGS1 had, every time you loaded into the game, you would see like an explanation of what happened last time, and it was racked with translational errors. Metal Gear Solid 2 is very well put together, very well edited, very well written for all of these prequel novels, so it actually does pay to read those. And especially if you're a Metal Gear fan, I think you're going to get a lot out of that.
Good. That's going to, by necessity, be pretty short because there's not a lot of video content we can show for those. All we're going to be showing is the screens that just have text on them. So how long can you really show that before it gets boring, you know?
So guys, that's Metal...
Oops, that's not intro, that's outro.
So guys, that's Metal Gear Solid 2. This game is one of my favorites of all time. It is an absolute masterpiece video game. This is kind of like, if you want Kojima in a nutshell, this is probably the game that describes him best. Like, a lot of really crazy storyline concepts going in there with a lot to say. He clearly has a lot to say, and with just an insane amount of game mechanics. So play Metal Gear Solid 2. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below of this game. I absolutely adore it. I hope you do too. And guys, I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to subscribe on this YouTube channel if you want to see more of these. We've been doing Metal Gear game reviews as well as all sorts of other stuff on here. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Good. I think I'll use some of that outro stuff in the intro. So first off, let's just take the intro, plop it down. We're going to take the outro, plop it down as well. And let's see what we got.
We finished another one. Metal Gear Solid 2 is checked off the list, and damn, this is a masterpiece video game. So guys, that's Metal Gear Solid 2. This game is one of my favorites of all time. It is an absolute masterpiece video game. This is kind of like, if you want Kojima in a nutshell, this is probably the game that describes him best. Like, a lot of really crazy storyline concepts going in there with a lot to say. He clearly has a lot to say, and with just an insane amount of game mechanics.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty concise little thing to put in the intro, actually.
We finished another one. Metal Gear Solid 2 is checked off the list, and damn, this is a masterpiece video game. If you want Kojima in a masterpiece video game. If you want Kojima in a nutshell, this is probably the game that describes him best. Like, a lot of really crazy stories. These games are masterpieces.
All right, wait, let's see what else
guys,
we had.
That's Metal Gear Solid 2. This game is one of my favorites of all time. It is an absolute masterpiece video game. This is kind of like...
That might even be a better thing to put in the intro, huh?
We finished another one. Metal Gear Solid 2 is checked off the list, and damn, this is a masterpiece video game. If you want Kojima...
No, actually, I think that's good.
Play Metal Gear Solid 2. Let me know what you guys think.
So that's all outro stuff. We're deleting that now.
All these games are masterpieces. Metal Gear Solid games, all of them are great. All the Metal Gear Solid games are masterpieces, but Metal Gear Solid 2 is like a masterpiece among masterpieces. This game is so good. Guys, let's take a look at Metal Gear Solid 2.
Good.
Guys, let's... An insane amount of game mechanics. Guys, let's take a look at Metal Gear Solid 2.
Okay, we have an intro. We've kind of cannibalized our outro, but I think we'll still have enough to make an outro later. Put our little spot for the for that thing. Technological leap. I think I might want to do storyline first. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities for what to do first. I almost think the environment thing would be good.
So Metal Gear Solid 2 came out...
Let's just grab all the storyline stuff. What's this?
The storyline in Metal Gear Solid 2 is really significant to me. It's actually one of my favorite... it's one of my favorite storylines in the entire series. It becomes very complex very quickly.
Okay, we're gonna take all of these. You know what, we'll just leave them all in here, but we will put a bookmark for later. And guys, that's going to do it for our video editing stream this time. Thank you for joining. If you want to find where these videos get posted, you can go on YouTube and look for the channel called Voice of Nick Vlogs. That's where these videos end up when we finish them. I'll post a link in the chat as well. That'll bring you to our newest on the channel, which is our Metal Gear Solid 1 classic game review. Give that a look. Make sure you click through it. Hit that follow button on YouTube so you can see the 11 videos we've already posted, as well as this newest one, which will be the 12th when it comes out. I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.